Hello everyone, just dropping in here right at the start to say that if you're listening to this on release day, we have a very important announcement about policy here at What the Trans. We no longer advocate being gay and doing crime. Nah, April Fools. We do, of course we do. If you're listening to this on any other day of the year, fun fact, this episode came out on April the 1st. Or did it? No, it did. April Fools. Love you all. Thank you.
Everybody, and welcome to What the Trans.
What the Trans? Yes, it's us. Welcome everybody. We are back.
Yes, not front.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to cut that and come back to it, but it's fine. Yes, it's us. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. Yeah. I've just it's been a big busy week. We've had protests, we've had article pieces on our website.
Yes, and we have indeed.
Yes, and we've just been having some fun as well with not all the serious pieces of police brutality and the founding of the same-sex laws in Japan being repealed. We've also now got some Twitch streaming going on where we're doing some gaming, where we're going for patriotism.
Oh, for patriotism?
Helldivers.
Oh, right, because I've not played Helldivers. So yes, so we're doing that regularly, aren't we? So every so often, weekly, there will be Alex and Valeria and Alyssa from the US podcast who will be playing some Helldivers together, and I will join in myself on the days when I am able to do that. But yes, check us out. We're on Twitch. Well, we're back on Twitch because we used to stream, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, we did like a good few streams. We did What the Trans live, wasn't it?
Yeah,
covering like the week's stories on a live Twitch sort of thing at the time. But
yes.
I think that one became a bit too resource intensive.
It did. Well, that was at the point when there was a fairly small number of people doing a large number of tasks, whereas now we have a slightly more reasonable group of people doing those self-same tasks. So we can, it's allocation of resources, isn't it?
It's all like HR admin.
Yeah, quite. Other than diving from orbit with our American cousins, how's your week been? What have you been up to?
No, that was pretty much all I did this week, if it was of any note.
I see. Well, in which case, I'm sorry to have asked and put you on the spot.
I shall hide. I know, we don't do visual comedy on this one.
No. I mean, you can do, it's just it won't really come across in this audio medium.
Yes, pretty chill. So, for me not doing much, you seem to have been a busy week this week.
Yeah, I mean, they all are now, which is weird, given that I don't actually have a job, even though it very much feels like I do sometimes. And the thing that's common to people who do have a job and people that don't have a job that we occasionally have to do is move house, which is what I'm going to be doing next month in 3 and a bit weeks now, which is
it's quite close.
Yeah, it's very unnerving. So we get the keys in the middle of next month, and so we've set a moving date a few days after that on a weekend. So we are enlisting the help of all of our friends who drive to come along and lug boxes, and the payment for which will be the satisfaction of a job well done, and I assume a very nice meal and some cookies and stuff. So
exactly, and forming the big convoy down the road.
And petrol money, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, we don't have electric cars, I'm afraid.
We do not, no. Certainly not Cybertrucks. Because who on earth would have those?
God, yeah, because people look so stupid driving those. Like, they're starting to appear in America at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's not get sidetracked with talking about a ridiculous new vehicle. The other thing I've been doing this week is I've been playing a game. There's this another explicitly queer RPG called Girl by Moonlight. And it's from Evil Hat, who are the same people that made Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is another tremendous game. I mean, just from the name alone, that one's a winner. But this is like a magical girl type game, so you go through like a transformation sequence, and then you have all your powers available to you. And basically there's a thing online where you can design your own little miniature figure. So I did that, and then it turned out one of the other players has a 3D printer, so I didn't have to get it shipped to me. I just paid for the plan and sent it to this friend of mine, and he printed it using his 3D printer. So now I have a cyberpunk, jetpacked, awesome, laser-toting wheelchair user as my little miniature figure, which is absolutely awesome. Looking forward to seeing if I can paint those. Yeah, so fun week.
That sounds like a fantastic week. I saw the videos you put on our What the Trans designated shit posting channel.
Yes.
Which is very key to our business at What the Trans.
Very important.
And it looks absolutely awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
it looks so cool.
Curious to see how it looks like after it, if you go and paint it, because some good details on that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he'd put it under a UV light for that little bit of film that you saw. So it was glowing blue, but obviously it's probably not going to have that quality after it's been painted, but it still just looks really cool. But yeah, Hero Forge is fantastic. If you need to go and design yourself a little miniature figurine, or a few of them for like your fantasy gaming or science fiction-y gaming or whatever, Hero Forge. That's what you're looking for. That's what I used, and yeah, it was tremendous fun, and they are not paying me to say that. So
yeah, we're not sponsored.
We are not sponsored by Hero Forge.
We've never been sponsored, full stop. So.
No, not by anybody, have we? But I'm trying to find a way of working that sponsorship bit to talking about. Speaking of people who are or aren't sponsored, I don't know. I don't have a clever way of doing it. So let's just do the news.
One person we're not endorsing in this case.
Smooth. Very good.
I'm slick on this. So one person we don't endorse is Wes Streeting.
Yeah.
So in our last episode, we spoke to Jenny Black from the Unison Trans Network. She mentioned that Wes Streeting was going to be attending the Unison Health and Service Group conference, and it was a conference that Wes Streeting was invited to. Now, it was said during the last episode that the conference organisers decided to meet to discuss whether to rescind the invite after objections were raised to his attendance. And that following the meeting, we've been told that Wes Streeting will no longer be attending that conference due to diary clashes. So something very ambiguous that kind of just sounds like some excuse to pull him out of it, given the stink that's been kicked up over it.
Yes, indeed. Now, what was it? Because he's come out and said some very, very problematic things. And was that why objections were raised to his attendance there?
Yes, it was. It was basically surrounding his comments on the single-sex wards and how he said keep wards single-sex and all that.
I see.
And then his continued defend, because he at one point defended Rosie Duffield.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I'm not totally surprised by that. And as we've put in the notes, there's a certain amount of speculation that it's not just down to the diary clash. It may well be that something has come up in his diary that he needs to attend, but it might also be thought, right, well, it's going to be too problematic and toxic for me to go and do that, so let's just say something to get me out of going, and then I don't have to do it, and problem solved.
Oh, exactly, yeah. I think if he did go to that, we'd be having some very extensive reporting on that situation.
Yeah, well, and the protests that would no doubt have resulted.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, we'd have a whole juicy set of exclusives right there. But yeah, exactly. So it's like, let's avoid this toxic situation.
Yeah, let's avoid this thing that could potentially get him into some more hot water. And speaking of people who are or should be in hot water, let's talk about Nick Fletcher. The people of Doncaster are probably familiar with their elected MP, Nick Fletcher. He looks like a haunted telephone pole made flesh and is a Conservative who was elected to the post in 2019. And he does have a bit of a history making fairly offensive statements about trans people. Not just offensive, though. They're also mostly just weird. Like this little gem from June 2022, where in a letter sent by him to the head teachers of all the schools in his constituency, he said that, quote, boys are boys and girls are girls, and that the media glamorizes a transgender lifestyle. He then also said that being trans is nothing more than a phase, and made a reference to the trans question, which that's not a great association, the trans question. Phrasing it like that, not good. So when this letter was inevitably leaked to the press, he was very keen to make it known that he was, quote, deeply disappointed that these private letters have entered the public forum. Now, A little bit more recently, in June of last year, he put his foot in it again with a frankly bizarre little speech in the House of Commons during a debate about proposed changes to the Equality Act, where he spoke at length about how he'd worked on construction sites for most of his life, and how the reporting of accidents and near misses has changed over the years. Now, he considered that leaving the Equality Act unchanged would be a near miss, and it should be amended to refer only to a person's biological sex.
That was so annoying. I was like, I remember listening to that during that debate, and I was like, oh, fuck
because you didn't have to go on.
It does. Bloody annoying.
In that particular instance, and in another one, because he's carried on with this odd little word association method of writing things, when earlier this month on the 18th of March, there was a debate in the Houses of Parliament about two opposing positions that the government had received. The first one was a petition saying the government should remove any and all references to LGBTQ plus topics during any relationship education in schools, and the second petition was supportive of leaving that in and that those topics should not be removed. When up pops Fletcher to say that teaching kids about trans people is like teaching them that, quote, 2 + 2 = 5. He went on quite a lengthy tangent about this, drawing repeated comparisons between trans people and teaching children that 2 + 2 = 5. We are not going to bother detailing the full quote, but wow, this guy really does have some odd ways of expressing his views. Obviously, we'll put an article in the description, well, a couple of articles in the description, the one about working on building sites and the one about 2 + 2 = 5, because it's just, you read what he's talking about and you can kind of see where he started from, but you don't see how he managed to spin it out for so long. Also, the media glamorizes a transgender lifestyle. What the fuck are you on about, man?
It's just bloody stupid, and it's just a prime example of how you need to figure out the start and end point of your metaphors before you go on your rant on the metaphor in the first place. Big glamorizing trans person's lifestyle. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, well, quite. And if anything, it's the opposite thing that's been happening. As we have spent years talking about, the media does the opposite of glamorize transgender people. We are constantly attacked and pilloried and vilified.
And caricatured and just absolutely just made villains.
Yeah.
And not like the kind of cool villains either. They're just like...
Yeah, we're not like the cool queer Disney villains.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll eventually become a Disney villain of some kind, or...
Oh, I pray for the day. But, yeah, so what do you think? What do you think about Flick Netcher?
Well, just from listening to what you were saying, including your haunted telephone pole, where I then had to Google it a second ago, because I was like, does he look like a haunted telephone pole? Yes, he does look like a haunted telephone pole.
Yeah, I looked at a picture of him and was like, I couldn't think of anything else, honestly, but the first thing that popped into my head was haunted telegraph pole. And it's because of the angles, I think. The angles on his face and his head and his shoulders, it just all looks like wooden, somehow.
Yeah, I'm going to be struggling to get him a podcast thumbnail.
Just use a picture of a telephone pole.
Yeah, that was yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to reference next. But moving aside from the wooden faces of Mr. Fletcher, just from the other comments, as I said earlier, it was so irritating during the debate on the Equality Act when he said that leaving the Equality Act unchanged would be called a near miss.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just inherent calling all trans people a danger and a problem in its own right.
Yeah, and he was talking about it in terms of the way health and safety reporting works and how you report near misses now. You never used to do that. And he's been on building sites long enough to see that change come in. But then he told this whole story and compared, leaving the Equality Act as it is, that would be a near miss. And it was an extremely tortured metaphor for him to use, I think, because I barely understood it myself when I was writing out the story.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's another lesson in politicians not getting their metaphors right.
Yeah, quite.
So, Nick Fletcher, you need to get another English lesson.
Back to school with you, my friend.
And they complain about us and pronouns.
Right? They can't even use adverbs correctly. Anyway.
Yes, so speaking from someone who needs to go to school to someone who needs to stay very far away from schools, and for example, it's like the education guidance, but if you remember that education guidance, some teachers don't really need that guidance to be shitty to trans people. Kevin Lister, formerly a maths teacher at the New College Swindon in Wiltshire, was sacked by that school for refusing to respect a trans student's new name and pronouns. He's now taken them to an employment tribunal and says the student requesting Lister to respect his new name and pronouns was akin to compelled speech. He's carried on being a lovely person at the tribunal, repeatedly misgendering the trans male student, who's also known to the proceeding as Student A. Lister said to Sky News, quote, "I took issue with the demand on me to socially transition children who are unable to make an informed decision. That is the intention of a policy to encourage children to socially transition and to push them towards the transgender lobby groups." He's talking about the school's policy he was fired for breaching. The barrister representing the college said the policies the college had in place do not give gender-critical staff a free pass from being, quote, "inclusive and treating people with respect."
Yes. So the problem is with this guy, Kevin Lister, is as a Red Dwarf fan, I can't read the word Lister without putting a Scouse accent on it, you know?
Oh, go on, put a Scouse accent on it now.
Kevin Lister?
Oh, that was it. I was trying to remember. That was really bad, but I couldn't remember what a Scouse accent was for a second there, which is slightly shameful of myself with that one.
Well, I'm not going to speak ill of my comrades in Liverpool. I love Liverpool. It's a wonderful city. But yeah, that's where Dave Lister from Red Dwarf is from, and we've gotten slightly further away from the news item than I particularly wanted to, but then that's my own silly fault. So we've got a couple of notes about this guy because he represented himself in his tribunal. He could have taken along like a union representative or a lawyer or something like that, but he didn't. He chose to represent himself.
Or actually, the union he was a part of declined to represent him. They were like, "No, we can't represent you in court."
Yeah.
Because it went against their policies. So
yeah, it's like you breached the rules. You've breached our rules. We can't help you. Bye.
Bye. Good on the union. Good on the union.
Yeah.
Join a union, even if your workplace doesn't have a recognised union. But that's meandering away from the topic again, like we like to do.
As we so often do.
So yeah, when it comes to representing yourself, you just don't do it. But when I spoke to some folk at Unison, they said that it highlights why it's so key to have a written policy on trans inclusion in the workplace, so that when that Kevin Lister comes in to fuck around, you can then make them find out. Because when you discipline someone, you can prove you followed the clear set guidelines you set out. Because I think from what I saw from paraphrased from our group was saying that the Fall Stater ruling, they didn't really have a trans inclusion policy in place at the barrister place, so that does affect things quite a lot. So
yeah, if they'd had a policy in place that she could have been shown to have breached, then that case might have gone very differently. But as it was, and I wonder if that was part of the strategy. She thought, "Ooh, I can nail him for that." But whatever, doesn't matter now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a clear thing for employers and trans networks and unions to sort of, if they can, push that kind
for those
things in place, even if that will prevent things like this in the future, that near miss.
Yes.
To quote a certain ghoul.
Yeah. Nice link. Well done.
But this wasn't the only thing that happened to Lister, was it? Despite losing that case.
Yes, indeed, because he's now on a list with the Disclosure and Barring Service, so he now cannot work with children anymore. He was previously been a maths teacher at the college in Wiltshire, and he can't do that anymore because of the way he's done this, and he's then lost his tribunal. He's on the DBS list and can't work with children anymore, so he needs to find another job to go and do. So yeah, may I suggest Asda? You know.
But even then, don't you still have to do a criminal DBS check at Asda as well? And even if it's not working for children, they can still consider it.
So this is down to the college's policy, so that's probably not going to come up in a criminal records check.
Because it has to be like an enhanced sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, best of luck to Lister.
Good luck. And speaking of trans policies,
yeah, slightly clunky segue, but we'll run with it. So the next story is about essentially a BBC policy on reporting about trans people. And this is according to a recent Metro article. The BBC is urging its presenters to take a dangerous stance on transphobia. Now, the accusations against the Beeb do have some merit, and I will come to those in a moment, but given that the Metro is owned by the same news group as several other tabloids that openly hate the BBC and their output, I'm not sure I'd go so far as to call it actively dangerous, although don't get me wrong, it is absolute dog whistle crap, and I hope that there's a good few journalists at the BBC who take it with several lorry loads of salt. It advises journalists that care is needed when someone has been labelled transphobic, and that when that term is brought up in on-air debates, it should be questioned, among other recommendations. This all stems from a 9-page document published late last year, which is about advice on reporting sex and gender. The document has been fully published online after it was leaked, and it reads at one point, "Debates, legislation and policies relating to transgender issues have been increasingly in the spotlight in recent years. Some of the issues are contested, with strongly held and sometimes incompatible views and no settled consensus. Individuals often feel they have a big personal stake in how these issues are reported, and that this can make it a challenging area for BBC journalism." Another thing brought up is, quote, "careful and accurate use of language, with the word cisgender being chosen as an example. The document says that cisgender is not familiar to many of our audience and may be considered offensive by some."
Only offensive to Elon Musk.
Well, there are a lot of gender-critical people who would try and use cisgender as, say that, oh, he called me cis, it's an offensive word. It's an offensive word, like saying turf is a slur. I've seen them try and argue that cis is also a slur, which obviously, although the only reason they say cis is a slur is because they use trans as a slur.
Yeah, exactly, because, quite frankly, even if this isn't quote-unquote dangerous, it's still cowardly and...
Yeah, it's mealy-mouthed, isn't it?
It's trying to appease the toddler in the room while the adults are actually talking.
Yes.
Because, quite frankly, half of the cis people I know wouldn't give a shit about whether they're called cisgender.
Yeah.
And even when the transphobic remarks are in place, it's a bit cowardly.
It is, isn't it? And it's pretty funny that they'll talk about how debates, legislation and policies relating to transgender issues have been increasingly in the spotlight in recent years without pointing out their own complicity in that being the case. It's like they're saying, well, we were just minding our own business and then all of a sudden, wham! Trans people.
Bam! Yes, the pot kettle black has suddenly appeared.
Yeah, rather than we've spent years talking about trans people, we've spent years stoking the fires and creating that hostile environment, using the passive voice there to say that these debates have been happening more recently, and the fact that they're even using the word debates is itself a bit of a red flag.
Because it's like whenever they're trying to create... Because earlier today, on our Discord, we had someone who tried to join from a journalist organisation called the S4C, who privately joined our group and then during our vetting process said, oh yeah, we just want to make a documentary on both sides of the debate about transport, which is a 50 billion red flags just all coordinating in one sentence.
Yep, 50 million red flags, all of them spelling out no.
No, you just run away and, I'm not going to talk anymore just in case they might just suddenly put this excerpt in their documentary or something.
Yeah.
And I can't say keep it off the record because we're literally recording. So
that was you. You put that one on the record, my dear.
Yeah.
So I was interested to see when we got that request, what on earth do you think you're doing? This is a private space for trans people to bitch about you lot. What on earth makes you think you'd be welcome there?
Yeah, I think we just said, we're still drafting up our media policies and at this time we're not admitting media at this moment.
Yeah, that's not what this is for, honestly.
Exactly.
Couldn't be further away.
I was just trying to avoid to make some corporate bullshit sounding stuff to get them away. But so getting back to the whole reporting side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that annoyed me, that use of the passive voice to say, oh, this thing's just been happening and we've had nothing to do with it.
It's not like we've been dropped off by aliens, like ancient alien style, that just suddenly appeared.
Yeah. Suddenly aliens. Yeah, it's, there's a reason that there's been, we've been increasingly in the spotlight in recent years, and it's because of, among other people, the BBC. Who have been platforming so many of these gender-critical people and platforming their ideas, and, then they pretend, oh no, we're perfectly innocent, we're completely innocent, we have to report both sides. Fuck off. Fuck off, BBC.
Oh, exactly. I mean, not even giving us our own platform, because, there's a whole bunch of reporting guides by a few organisations on how to report trans rights and such. So, the Trans Journalist Association. They could have been a reference and like a copy and paste situation. Like, even like the big associated Reuters.
Reuters have got a good policy. I know that because I've worked with Reuters, yeah.
Yeah, so like they could have gone to someone who's famed on their neutrality as a news source to do neutral reporting to actually guide their policy when they've got literal experience and even if it appeases their, cis people situation with having cis people running the rules, they still didn't follow Reuters.
They could have taken some best practice from any one of a number of other places and they didn't. And they came out with the most mealy-mouthed rubbish. So I wouldn't quite call it dangerous, but as we've said, I certainly would call it cowardly. Anyway, let's crack on.
So anyway, a few weeks ago we talked about Victoria McLeod, the High Court judge who's set to retire later this year. Well, going back to the court, we're now going to talk about Simon Meyerson, KC. Meyerson is also a judge, although not for the High Court, and recently found himself in hot water for some very ill-advised social media posts. On Twitter, or X, or Twix, he was posting to a particular trans person who refuses to be complicit into their own dehumanization, or as papers call him, an activist. Said person reported the tweets to Meyerson's superiors as grossly inappropriate, and Meyerson has now been disciplined by the Lord Chancellor and Lady Chief Justice. That sounds so posh.
It does.
Essentially, they found him guilty of acting in an offensive manner and failing to maintain the standards of his judicial office. The Lady Chief Justice Baroness Carr also finding that Meyerson engaged in politically controversial topics, which is their way of softly pointing out his conduct could be seen as raising questions over his impartiality. What he actually said was, and I quote, "Part of the problem is that people who conduct the debate on the side of trans people are the same people who cheered on Corbyn. It means the politics are poisonously personal and the intellect is tiny, you stupid, condescending fool." And also, so, Twitter username of trans person, "What's the deal? I'm blocked, but I'm not on your list of people to be shot when the trans revolution happens. Can I appeal?" He also accused them of making idiotic statements and saying, "Trying to patronise me as well doesn't make the nonsense true."
So, sounds like a lovely fella, doesn't he?
The swell guy.
Yeah. A real... No, I can't even try and think of anything to sarcastically describe him. This is just absolutely a dick move. Obviously, they've censored him. They've had to. Because there is no way that you could interpret that as anything but he's trying to be offensive. And I know there's that whole thing about how social media feeds off people getting angry at each other. It tries to format itself so that happens. But it's still like, fucking hell, guy. That's gone a bit far there, haven't you? If you, in the context of your workplace, used social media and called somebody a stupid, condescending fool, there would be consequences for you, and you are not a judge.
Oh, exactly. It's finding out the consequences, and they more or less had to.
Yeah, he's fucked around and now he's found out. I'm fascinated by, because Meyerson and other people who are of his ilk who express these views so elegantly, what is their obsession with their opponent's intellect, right? They have to be seen as being cleverer than who they're arguing with. Like, their dicks will shrink if they don't point it out.
It's just so annoying because they have to sound like they're right all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it the true sign of someone who's notoriously stupid is saying they're right all the time and not admitting, well, I don't know everything, and understanding there's nuance in the world about things that aren't just 1 + 1 = 2 in aspects. Like, there's blurred lines, and the more you go into it in an advanced way, things are very, very complex. And
quite. Which is something that Nick Fletcher could do with bearing in mind as well. So, good. I'm glad he got censured. I was kind of hoping that he'd lose his job, but can't have everything, I suppose. I'm not sure this is going to change his mind.
No.
I think he's just going to, take it on board in a, "I've been cancelled by the left sort of way.
Impending book tour and national media circus.
Yes, absolutely. So, up next, we've learned recently that the Scottish Parliament has ended its membership of the Stonewall Diversity Champions programme. A spokesperson for Holyrood said that the membership had expired in February 2024 and that they had informed Stonewall they wouldn't be renewing it. Now, the Diversity Champions programme is, of course, something that companies and organisations will pay Stonewall to be involved in. It's one of their main fundraising streams, actually, and they will provide advice, best practice for how an organisation can be much more LGBT compassionate, basically, how well to work with LGBT staff and service users, for example. But this news does come on the heels of several other high-profile or government organisations pulling out of this scheme, which includes the Ministry of Justice, the Cabinet Office and the aforementioned BBC. And in the Scottish Government's case, this comes just a week after announcing they'd ban their staff from wearing rainbow lanyards for their office passes, although that rule doesn't apply to MSPs or their own individual staffs, just the functionaries of the Scottish Government rather than working for a particular individual. So, what do you think?
Actually, to start with, we have tried to message Stonewall about this, so I need to chase them up on a response, but we haven't had a response yet. But we're gonna see if we can get in touch with them.
Yeah.
But on the case of the Scottish Parliament, why they just randomly seem to be devolving for I'm not sure what's inspired this to suddenly come about, because it just happened all within this week, and from what we can tell, the SNP are generally still trans positive, even if Joanna Cherry does bring that down. But what suddenly brought this along is the question. Has a scene network been introduced into the parliamentary staff group, or?
Well, I think it's possibly / probably going to be a case of, given that these other organisations have all stopped doing it quite publicly, and the Scottish Parliament has decided, okay, well, it's much too toxic a thing for us to be getting involved with just at the moment. Hopefully the time will come where we can pick it back up. Maybe they also think, well, we've taken on a lot of what Stonewall have said to us. We don't need to keep paying them to provide guidance for us because we're in a good place already. So there could be any one of a number of reasons behind it. But yeah, it is just a bit like, is everything okay up there? Kind of vibe to it for me.
Oh, definitely. I think this one we're just going to have to see what other details come out of it and how it devolves or proceeds coming up, because I think I have a slight feeling that we're going to be covering something like this again. So
yes indeed, and obviously we'll keep our eyes to the north, because I still hope that Scotland invades England and causes Manchester to become part of Greater Scotland. I am absolutely more up for being ruled from Edinburgh than I am from Westminster.
Oh, too true. Can it come? Yeah, it's like I'm too far south to be liberated, I think.
Yeah, sorry, darling.
No, I'll just have to run away when the fighting starts. But yeah, aside from that, there's been a lot of depressing news on this episode so far.
There has, yes.
So we found sort of some really nice ones as well. So early this month, on the 15th of March, 50 years after the conference titled Transvesticism and Transsexualism in Modern Society took place, a blue plaque was unveiled at the steps of the Leeds University Union. The Leeds Civics Trust commissioned this plaque to commemorate the anniversary of the conference, as it was the first one on trans issues convened by trans people in the UK. During its unveiling, the city councillor Hannah Bivell said, "In the current onslaught of abuse for our trans community, I love being here to unveil this plaque. Our trans history should be proudly displayed." Yeah.
Agreed.
Quite a nice one.
So, I mean, again, cities in the north doing it right. And again, this is just turning into Ashleigh talks enthusiastically about cities that begin with L, because I love Leeds as well. I've played several really good gigs there, and I've been to a few as well. So, and I'm glad Leeds are providing a level of leadership and empathy that London isn't.
I think Ashleigh will soon be getting a big fur coat and start chanting "Winter is coming" very soon as the Game of Thrones music starts playing.
Bold of you to assume I don't already have a furry coat, darling.
Too true.
Because I absolutely do, and it looks, when I pair it with the nice fluffy hat, it looks very Soviet.
That's where the Starks came from, I think, Soviet Russia.
It In Soviet Russia, winter comes at you. No.
Well, it literally did in Game of Thrones, though, didn't it?
I don't know. I've kind of blotted out most of the end of Game of Thrones because it just ended so badly, as I'm sure nobody listening to this podcast needs to be told.
That could just be a whole thing for our What the Trans Nights, that one.
Oh gosh, couldn't it? Yeah, What the Trans, the Long Night. So that was good, and it's nice that we're able to cap off the news with a couple of nice bits of something positive happening, because to follow off the heels of that story, earlier this month the street art festival Upfest announced that the headline artist of their festival this year will be Mr. Samo, a Portsmouth-based trans street artist and activist. Following the announcement, Samo said that he was so honoured to be the lead artist this year, and that it's a real powerful statement for the team to put a trans artist at the forefront of the event during these times. They are showing that allyship with the community and in itself bringing change and inclusion. Alongside this, Upfest founder Steve Hales said, "We fundamentally believe in the power of art to transcend boundaries and challenge perceptions." So, yeah, that's pretty bitchin'. Upfest is, of course, that takes place in Bristol.
It was always nice when you see the street, because at my hometown we had some nice street art happen, and it really made the place look really nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that it's being led by a trans man, and sort of it's very nice to hear things happening in local places, like leading arts festivals. I mean, what was really wholesome for me was in my home place there was a exhibition on LGBTQ artists and different sort of things there that I would have gladly reported on, but I think we just it happened at the wrong time at the wrong place. But we'd really love to hear more of these kinds of like small things in your local area. Report and boost them on What the Trans, because you told us that this is what we initially did want to do for What the Trans when it initially started.
Yeah, that's right. So when Michelle and I first started it, we thought that we'd be covering this kind of cool artsy news from Bristol, from Aberdeen, from Cardiff, all these different places. We thought they're bound to have a trans community that exists. What are those communities up to? We want to talk about those things, and we still do. So if you're listening to this, aware of some cool trans thing that's about to be happening, let us know. We will absolutely signal boost it for you.
Yeah, like no matter how small or big or what the situation is, because I've saw this recent like trans skater Instagram group, which is just a bunch of trans skaters skating about, and I so want to do a story about that at some point.
Cool. We'll have to reach out, won't we?
Exactly. Or if you're part of that group, reach out to us. But yeah, we need more of those sort of stories out there. So if you, dear listener, we'd love to hear more of these.
Yes, we would. But for now, let's stop talking about stuff that we hope to hear about that's about to happen, and let's talk about something that you yourself saw happen, yes?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I had the misfortune of seeing some quite horrid things happen to fellow members of our community.
Yeah, so this is about the Royal College of General Practitioners, was it?
Yeah, it's the RCGP and the CANSG, all the bloody acronyms.
Yes, many of them. So there was a counter-protest to the fact that there were several avowed conversion therapists on the bill for this conference. So it was protested, and, well, I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, so on Saturday, the 23rd of March, a health conference was put together by the anti-trans pro-conversion therapy group CAN-SG. This conference was to be held at the Royal College of General Practitioners. Despite calls to cancel the conference, the college claimed that due to legal risks, they were unable to cancel the event. So on the 23rd of March, the activist group Trans Action Bloc put together a protest outside of the college, a protest we have reported on, and we'll put the links in a description of the pieces we did on that. The protest involved blocking the entrances into the college and setting off smoke bombs at the entrance. Following this, the police brutally attacked the crowd and forced them away from the doors. However, despite the crowd no longer being anywhere near the entrances and no longer being a threat, the police still decided to attack the crowd, and very disproportionately. At points dragging protesters away and even firing pepper spray at protesters.
I see, so you saw this yourself?
Well, I didn't see the pepper spraying, but I saw the aftermath of people with watering their eyes down, which they wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't pepper spray.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many officers were there,
there were
in the response?
There was quite a lot. at the event. I think I had some pictures, but I have to be very careful what pictures I show for that one. But it was like a good 40, 50, sort of 40 or 50 police or even more. There was quite a lot of police around that. I think it was partially bolstered because they were quite conveniently near a train station where the British Transport Police was.
So there's quite a lot of them. And how big's the crowd?
The crowd was a fair size. I think I saw about 100-ish people, maybe more.
Okay.
So it was quite a decently sized crowd on that one.
So what, the police dragged people away from the entrance to stop them from blocking it, but then after everyone's been moved away from it, they continue to attack the crowd?
So essentially they moved them away, and then they were just sort of away from the entrance, just stood there, they were there for about 10 or so minutes, still chanting, setting off smoke bombs, even if they were away from the entrance, sort of no longer being a threat, and then they just made 3 or 4 other attack attempts at the protesters.
Were you the only witness to this? Were there other journalists?
No, so we had our trans news team with us. So we had Honor with us, Lily, who's also made some photos for us. So there was What the Trans. I think there was 1 or 2 BBC journalists as well, actually, which people were like, oh, they're a bit dodgy. So there was them as well. There was 1 or 2 other photojournalists as well. So there were a good few reporters there who knew that this was going to be a bit of a stir.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was going to be this big of a stir thing, but it was quite a event on that one that people were able to report on.
I don't think I'm surprised.
No.
That the police had this level of response. Just, to an extent, obviously, I just think, God, why would they do that? But then the answer is, as ever, because they are the police.
Protecting the people who are powerful.
Yeah, well, exactly. And they only have one way to respond, and that's how they were responding, because there's nothing else in the box of tricks. That's all they know how to do. And that wasn't the only protest that our team attended over that weekend, was it?
No, exactly. Another one of our reporters the next day went to this really cool protest by Strike Back 2024 is what their Instagram name is, but this cool group of young trans people organising protests and in this occasion it was a protest about the banning of puberty blockers.
I see.
From the NHS, and there was just a disproportionate amount of police compared to the size of the crowd that was there. And what our reporter found was that the police even bullied the protesters over the use of megaphones at the protest venue, which was Parliament Square.
I see.
The thing is, with Parliament Square, I've seen megaphones being used at Parliament Square before, because I went to this protest called Stand Against Suella from London Pride, where there was a megaphone. I've got photos of the said megaphone, and they were still trying. They seemed to be very on edge, despite them just being some trans folk who explicitly in their protest promotion said, this is a peaceful protest, we're not going to be doing anything, this is just us standing and having our voices heard and speaking to people passing by and being there.
Yeah, I see. So you weren't there yourself at Parliament Square, but you managed to get some pictures, didn't you, from the protest at the RCGP?
Yeah, so I brought so as part of whenever I go to a protest, I'm doing some photojournalism. I've got my nice camera, and you can really get some shot. And quite frankly, you're there to document all the shocking stuff that could happen. And for example, one of these was that at one point the police just threw people to the floor very violently as well. And you could have easily been denied, but we've got photo evidence. It's very blurry, so I haven't released it, but it's sort of like people were thrown to the floor, pepper spray. It's sort of like a giant litany of a list of stuff, of horrid treatment of the protesters. There was even facial recognition cameras used at the protest as well.
Have you ever seen the police use that level of violence before? Like in person, have you ever seen it?
Quite frankly, I'm fairly new to this protesting space of going to protest. The wildest I've personally had before then, I went to this protest that was protesting against this place called March for Life, who were doing their own march. And there was a bit where there was like a standoff between the counter-protesters, who were the feminist fight back group, and then the March for Life people on the other side. And even then, the police were just stood in the middle, not really doing much, just sort of like trying to keep one away from the other. And the only wild bit was because one of the March for Life people lunged at the crowd right behind me and caused a bit of a risk to my own safety there, but that's the most danger I've seen. So this one was a gigantic step up. Like, I immediately, because some people would have probably noted I was quite a distance away from the protesters at times, because I just didn't know how to safely navigate my reporting and the police, because I'm still trying to get myself a press pass from NUJ.
Yeah.
So I was like, I might just accidentally be arrested for just reporting on...
Or get knocked to the floor and get your camera smashed.
Yeah, exactly. But to be fair, I'm insured, so that's on the camera,
okay.
so...
yeah, but still, you don't want that to happen.
No, exactly. It was like proper... I had to be it was like a situation where you could tell the police were clear and present danger at the protest. It was mad. Police have probably been really bad other places, just the first time I've seen this sort of thing in person, so...
Yeah, it can be quite a lot in person, can't it? It's been a while since I've personally seen that level of police violence. It's certainly not happened since I've been in a wheelchair, but I'm not sure what I'd do if it did happen now. I wouldn't really have much choice but to just kind of surrender, really. Because I am a wheelchair user. I can't just dash off in a particular direction to avoid the police. Yeah.
Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to witness that. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Just in a general...
No, I'm good. I'm usually able to shrug stuff off like that, so I'm usually...
Bounce back.
Good on that one. Yeah, I took the day off, so Lily did some great reporting on the protest the next day. I don't know how Lily did it. I've offered some resources to our other reporters as well, because I wasn't even the reporter who was probably the most surprising out of it, because we also had Honor, who... This was like their second protest they've been to, that they've reported on.
I see.
So for him even, that would have been quite a shock for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Just all of a sudden, bam, escalation. Well, I'm glad you went, and I'm glad you managed to keep the team safe. And some of the pictures certainly of the smoke bombs and stuff I've seen on our social media, and you can see that as well, dear listener, of course. You follow us on social media, on the Instagrams. We're obviously on Twitter, we're on Threads, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Facebook. If you feel you are able to support what we do, then please do check us out on Patreon. The articles that we've mentioned, we'll put a couple of links in the description, are on our website. That's whatthetrans.com. But that's our episode. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. And speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
This episode of What the Trans was written and produced by Ashleigh Talbot and Alex Bedwell, and was edited by Ben Swithin, and with music composed by Warwick Sarah, Yui Carlberg. We would especially like to thank our Patreon producers, who are
Gray,
Elizabeth Anderson,
Bernice Roust,
Ellen Meller,
Jay Hoskins,
Trowan,
Ashley,
Matty B,
Squid Zena,
Setcap,
Jane,
Roberto DePrunk,
Rose Absolute,
Sarah,
Sina,
Kiki T,
Derek,
Sky Killane,
Eric Whitman,
B,
Jude,
Monsieur Squirrel,
Fergus Evans,
Anubis Jackal,
Kamina,
Brandon Craig,
Break the System,
Sean Phillips,
Heidi Reardon,
Ezra,
Sophia LeSixth,
Lentil,
Philippa Teprog,
Clara Volume,
Amelia,
Corvina Ravenheart, the trans metal DJ from Twitch and VR chat, will play St. Lucifer for props.
Tabitha Joe Cox, aka Candy,
Fiona McDonald,
Torikuso H,
Murgatroyd,
Ontologically Unjust,
Stella,
Cinder Goza,
Rebecca Prentice,
Crazy Richard,
Dan Oblivion,
Florence Stanley,
The Cthulhu Kid,
Helen _
Ellie Hollingsworth bought too many magic cards,
Nick Ross,
Alice Chalkley,
Melody Nix,
Fiona Punchard,
John,
Nick Duffy,
CB Bailey,
Gordon Cameron,
Ted Delphos,
Wen Riverup,
Vig Parsons,
Patreon user,
Vic Kelly,
Catherine,
Sabrina McVeigh,
Cassius Adair,
Melissa Brooks,
Karakan12,
April Heller,
Sophie Lewis,
Alexandra Lilly,
Claire Scott,
Ariadne Peña,
Lauren O'Nions,
Bernard's Pink Jellybean,
Lanos.
Chris Hubley.
Thank you to you all.
Bye.